panelists. It's such a great honor for me to moderate this very valuable panel, and this is a great interesting topic on banking sector and finance, which I'm sure there will be a lot of questions to our great panel. First, I'd like to start with two central bank governors, and I want to give 7-8 minutes per panelist, 7 or 8 minutes. And then I want to take 3 questions from the audience, and we have 50 minutes in total. So the first 2 questions for the central bank governors. Given the impact of the global pandemic on banks and high inflation expectations going forward, how do you see the role of central banks in the short term to promote a stable macroeconomic environment and achieve price stability while regulating the financial sector? And what is the incentive for banks to support climate-friendly investments, which is the theme of the Istanbul Economic Summit this year? And my second question will be, do you see opportunities for international partnership from Europe to Turkey to Caucasus? And how can Turkey and other partner countries can establish better and deeper economic ties in the region? And what will be the contribution of financial services? Please.
Thank you very much. It is okay? Okay. For very interesting topics, especially from experience from central banks. Now we have two central bankers, and our experience will be, in my opinion, very useful for the others, especially in the periods, difficult time, and spillover effects from Corona crisis 19 pandemic. At the moment, it is very challenging to conduct monetary policy because we are facing with two key challenges. On one hand, the consequences of the pandemic are still present, which are influencing the slowdown in economic growth and which require the continuation of expansionary policies that keeping interest rates low. On the other hand, rising inflation requires restrictive monetary policy and rising interest rates. A sharp rise in interest rates would certainly jeopardize the recovery of the economy, as they would decrease aggregate demand, slow down investment, and lead to job losses. Developing countries with high level of public debt would be particularly vulnerable. Further, high interest rates would also deepen global inequalities and lead to the rich being even richer and poor even poorer. On the other hand, the question is whether inflation is a short-term phenomenon. Because Keynes said almost 100 years ago, prices once they reach a higher level hardly ever fall. It is obvious that the situation should be carefully monitored, and in that case, as I expect, in terms out of inflation is not a short-term phenomenon. Interest rates should be gradually increased. But it is very important to restructure developing country public debt so as not to get into a new debt crisis. Quantitative easing should not be abolished, but model should be changed. Instead of giving money to commercial banks, green investment and fight against climate change and the reduction of inequalities should be financed. Also in this area, digitalization. Regarding maintaining the stability of the banking and financial system in the circumstances of external shocks, the institutional response in the form of successive packages of economic support and protection of the financial system of bank clients is important, thus contributing to macroeconomic stability and preserving the solvency and liquidity of the banking sector in every country. Since March last year, the central bank of our country, Montenegro, has adopted 10 packages of temporary measures to support the economy and citizens to mitigate the negative effects of corona crisis pandemic. The Central Bank of Montenegro continues to actively monitor the further development and impact of COVID-19 pandemic on the financial system in order to implement new measures as needed. Climate change is already affecting the banking system, and the transition of loan portfolio is very important. Adjustment and transition of the real sector significantly affected to the banking sector, which itself needs to adapt to the changes that are inevitable. I think that no special incentive is needed because changes are certain and they happen every day, and the risk can already be transferred to the financial risk. However, what regulators should do is to make sure that banks provide reservation for climate risk as well as for all other risks and include climate risk in stress and testing in the banking system. Now, answer on the second question.
Second question is that, so, okay, great.
I remember, Montenegro, the fact that Montenegro, like Turkey, is a candidate country for the EU membership demonstrates the importance of geostrategic and economic interest in establishing close cooperation with EU countries. Another connection between both Montenegro and Turkey with the EU is their NATO membership. In a broader sense, there are also countries of the South Caucasus region, Azerbaijan, Armenia, and Georgia, which are also attractive in terms of their geoeconomic and geostrategic position, as well as their potential in tourism industry. Therefore, we should establish close link with these countries. Montenegro has close historical, cultural, political, and economic ties with the countries of this region, in particular with Turkey and Azerbaijan. The total inflow of FDI to Montenegro from this region in the last 5 years amounted to over 2 billion euros. And this is a good example of the importance and connection of Montenegro with this region. Foreign trade cooperation is also important. Montenegro's export to the region in the last 5 years amounted to almost 1 billion euros, and imports to about 7 billion euros. These data confirm that there is plenty of room for improvement and intensification of our cooperation. The financial sector is certainly the core of this cooperation, and 2 banks from this region have been established in our country, Montenegro, Ziraat Bank from Turkey, and Adriatic Bank from Azerbaijan. International organizations can certainly support this cooperation, both through loans for the development of the economies of these countries and for the construction of infrastructure that would better connect this region. First of all, I am thinking of the role of EIB and EBRD. I would also like to point out the 2 financial institutions, the European Central Banks and BIS from Basel, which have granted credit repo line to our country, to Montenegro, in the event of threat to stability of the banking system. Fortunately, we did not those lines, and most of the indicators of the banking system certainly too useful to extend these lines to other countries as well, accelerating EU accession and including other candidate countries would certainly encourage the development and cooperation of our countries in our region. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Zukic. This is great. It's very promising and great to hear that there are potentials for partnership in the region, which we know countries can grow together through economic collaboration and through collaboration in financial sector and banking. And thank you very much for your remarks. And Mr. Bankacilik, the floor is yours.
Thank you, and as all participants, I also want to thank organizers for inviting me. So regarding your questions, as my dear colleague from Montenegro was describing, central banks are in quite difficult and challenging situation, I have to say, because the crisis which happened, as it is called often, once in a century crisis, gave us headaches which we have not saw before. For example, if I talk in terms of macroeconomics, in Georgia, for example, we experienced a shock from both sides, from supply side and from demand side. And this is something very difficult to address because usually central banks address and take actions against demand pressures. So when there are factors which are given to the economy, like when oil prices increases and a country does not produce oil, there is no way not to allow prices to increase. And then price increase, if it comes with secondary rounds, then it is very difficult to deal with. Georgia, relatively small country, was damaged quite a lot by the pandemic. The tourism sector has becoming very active in Georgia, contributing more and more to the economy. In 2019, before the crisis, just to give you one number, about 19% of GDP flew to Georgia in terms of foreign exchange from the tourists. So population 3.7 million in 2019. Georgia received about 9 million tourists. So the 2020 was supposed to be much better, but unfortunately happened what happened. So let me give you like three very briefly lessons, what we learned and what we think should be done in the short term by the central bank. First of all, we central bankers have to make sure that we fix the roof while the sun is still shining. That's absolutely necessary. In case of Georgia, we started to address quite a number of structural issues before the pandemic. First of all, this is high dollarization of the Georgian economy, the financial sector, which can be quite damaging when crises like that happen. It has its rules. I could talk about it for hours. There is no time for this, but we took as market-friendly as possible macroprudential measures to reduce dollarization in the country, which did result in quite better situations than we would have had. This is one. There was an issue of very high growth of consumer lending in Georgia. It was skyrocketing, and we had to somehow put a brake on it because indebtedness of population has been reaching very high. So we did it, and it really helped us. The second, not to close eyes on the problem. Let's make sure, we have to make sure, central bankers, and we know what's going on in the financial sector. What are the real balance sheets of commercial banks? If we try to present good balance sheets, and in fact, if it's not the case, these damaged loans, the non-performing loans will not go anywhere. So they need to be addressed. So we have to make sure that we know this. Fortunately, again, for Georgia, we were in quite good situation. Our non-performing loans were the smallest that we ever had. It was just 2.3% of banking portfolio. So we dealt quite well with this. But of course, some loans were impaired, some loans were damaged, and we have to make sure that we know what it is. We know at this point what it is. And the third, we have to make sure that we turn challenges into opportunities. And let me explain what it means. COVID pandemic, in fact, is turning out, and it's not over yet, unfortunately, is turning out to be disruptive. It is going to make some changes in our everyday life. You know, we have been in so many meetings of Zoom or WebEx or Microsoft that I guess, like myself, you hate to have these kind of meetings. And actually, I was so glad that when I was invited here, because finally I have a chance to talk to people face to face, and it's really, really good to be back like that. But I mean, what also showed us, especially in the financial system, and actually that was the only system which was working in Georgia, is that we need to make sure that we support digital economy. We support transformation, and I mean, it cannot be done with just one sector. It should be ecosystem in all directions of the economy. Again, nobody wants crisis. Nobody wants crisis, but unfortunately they happen, and they happen from different sides. So we have to support as much as possible, not just because if something like that happens again, we are ready, which also is the case. Unfortunately, we have to be ready, but to make sure that this kind of transformation makes economic efficiency much higher, and it has an ability to deal with this crisis like that. Sustainable finance, the previous discussion of panel was very interesting for us. National Bank of Georgia is very active on sustainable finance issues. In 2017, we became a member of Sustainable Banking Network, which is an IFC supported initiative. There are 5 stages, and we have already reached the 4th stage, which is implementation. 2 months ago, we published our first financial sustainability report. We have requested from commercial banks to mandatorily report on ESG, environment, social, and governance indicators, because we need to know what's going on in this direction. At the same time, what we saw is that the financial system is quite eager to engage because they understand that there are opportunities. So once we acknowledge, the central banks, that climate-related issues are a source of financial risk, then we share responsibility. And regulator, system, and borrowers, we are in the same boat now. And so if we believe that this is the case, we have to do everything to make sure that everything we do also has a part which address financial sustainability. So we have a sustainable finance roadmap, which has 4 pillars, and one of the pillars is how to direct flows into sustainable finance sector. We are a leader in the region, Caucasus and Central Asia, South Caucasus and Central Asia in this direction, and we will continue our journey in this direction. I mean, just imagine that 10 years ago, for example, central bankers talking about climate, right? Most likely they would not. And when I was in Parliament presenting my annual report, a number of parliamentarians asked me, what are you talking about? Are you Minister of Environment or are you a central bank governor? And of course I explained what's the reason and why we have to make sure that this is very important for financial stability. Financial stability is of course important for sustainable growth. And last question you asked me. Like Turkey, I mean, we are neighboring countries, and like Turkey, we are between East and West. We are Asians and we are Europeans, and we want to take as much benefits from this as possible. In the past, I mean, we have very good example of excellent cooperation. There is a Plisi-Baku-Ceyhan pipeline which delivers oil from Azerbaijan via Turkey through Turkey to Europe. and there's a lot of cargo between Europe and South Caucasus, and we hope that this will even increase more. I think that what we have to do in the future is that we can, in the region, we can implement projects which will be in line with sustainable finance and which will benefit all the countries. And there is one thing which is very important, that Turkey is the largest country with the largest economy with our neighbors, right? So, I mean, if, for example, Turkey becomes a financial hub, it will be very beneficial for all the countries in the region. I mean, Islamic banking, for example, in Turkey is a very interesting topic, and we can also work with Turkey or other countries in this direction. So I think there are a lot of opportunities in this direction, and we can make it work. And let's also not forget that in case of Georgia, I want to say that we also have aspirations for EU. We have associating agreement with Europe, and our aspiration is also NATO. So all these things, I think, will lead us to cooperation. And I'm sure the exams which we already have can be multiplied, and we will have much more very good and interesting projects. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Governor, for these great insights. And I'm glad you mentioned the importance of sustainable finance and digital economy. These are the topics international organizations such as the World Bank and IFC fully support. And it's great to hear this from you. Mr. Umberto Del Panta, you heard the central bank governors, and we heard that there is a potential for partnership in the region. And my question to you is that how can international organizations can support this potential partnership? Second, this morning we also heard from the public and private sector leaders that they are committed to creating new climate-friendly investments. And we know that European Investment Bank is one of the biggest providers of green finance in the world. And what is the role you see for the EIB and other international partners going forward?
Hello, can you hear me? Very good. Thank you very much for inviting the European Investment Bank. I'm the representative in Turkey, and I'm very glad to be here. Let's start taking the first question you're posing. It is about partnership between countries and the role of international organizations. Well, times like the one we are living in, where we had COVID unexpected, or where we have expected or not climate action, show how it is important to act together sometimes. Now, international organizations have been created exactly with the idea and the objective of furthering cooperation among countries, because some of the issues that we are facing cannot be resolved at the national level. And here, I'm honored, I'm an humble officer of the EIB, which means the bank or long-term financing arm of the European Union. The European Union itself, at the beginning, transformed itself over time, was a typical international organization, which was created, among others, to further cooperation in order to prevent war. I am 60 years old, and I was very lucky because I didn't see wars in Europe. But my grandfather, grandmother, my mother, they all saw 2 world wars in Europe. So I'm really lucky. And you got an award, a Nobel Prize, exactly for peace. So certainly you can criticize international organizations, but when they have objectives which are common and not particular, I think we would need see more of them and more action in them, because they can be helpful. And about always the first question, let me say something. Sometimes international organizations are difficult to be structured and created. They have particular structure and regulations. And when times comes like for COVID or climate action, their structure are difficult to adapt to the emergency. But up to now, and we've seen in these very few years, they have shown a degree of pragmatism that has helped them and all of us overcoming the most difficult issues. So this would be the first question. Then the second question is about the IFIs and the EIB and how they can contribute to climate action and so on. Well, here I would like just to say a few words. IFIs, so international financial institutions, are different from normal banks. They are different in many aspects. One of these is that usually they don't want to maximize profit. They are profitable. They cover their cost. But this allows them, instead of focusing sometimes too much on profitability in the short term, it helps them to focus on the goals they've been created for, which are policy goals. Now, climate, of course, now there are rules and everybody has to follow it. But sustainability, which is an used and abused term today, is embedded in the IFI's philosophy from the very beginning. Just to give you an example, I'm 30 years at the European Investment Bank. And I remember the first project, I followed more than 100 projects. Well, we had the impact on the environment 30 years ago. We had the impact on, or we were considering procurement aspects, which is important for the fiscal sustainability and economic sustainability of a country, for example. When we were assessing a project, of course we were looking at the financial rate of return to assess the creditworthiness of a borrower, but also the economic rate of return, which is from a broader perspective, externalities, social impact, environmental impact, all these needs to be considered. So, to close the point, I believe that the role is there, they've been well established. Of course, they are transforming in each other. I've seen myself, they have been changing some objectives decade after decade, which is an improvement. One aspect, however, that we have to keep into account, that IFIs all put together, they are very small vis-a-vis the world where they are operating. Now, when I'm presenting the EIB, I always say we are the largest IFI in the world. We do 80 billion per year euros of new financing. We have done 1 trillion. We are going to do 1 trillion. But all these amounts, compared to the needs that the world has, are small. So in a certain sense, it's not what they can do, because they are already doing, but maybe these useful cooperation tools needs to be reinforced and expanded. This is what I would say. This is all I have to say. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Dalpanta. These are great points, and all these issues and recommendations you raised, all here will be important input for the outputs of the Istanbul Economy Summit, which will certainly be captured as recommendations going forward for both the public sector and private sector investors in the region. Now, I want to discuss the legal side of issues. And Mr. Saro Benglian is the top attorney working with major companies and financial institutions. Where do you see the main challenges and opportunities? I would also like to ask you, we're talking about a potential international partnership and multi-country investments in the whole region. We have a multi-country panel today. And from what I saw, our previous work in the region is that dispute settlement mechanism and dispute resolution is an important issue to address. And investors need a credible and effective dispute settlement mechanism in the region. What are your thoughts as an attorney about strengthening international arbitration mechanisms that would comfort the foreign investors?
Thank you very much for the compliment in the first place, and thank you for all. So the question has many different aspects, and I will just try to comment on the external and internal sides of it. And as for the external challenges and the opportunities, I just meant the first question, the challenges and opportunities. I may maybe emphasize on the economic first and the legal aspects and the second place. I mean, ladies and gentlemen, as you are well aware, today's world is moving amazingly fast-paced, and the countries like Turkey, due to the volatility, high volatility in the market, I mean, maybe they are more faster than it. So, indeed, Turkish financial circumstances and Turkish financial structures create challenges and opportunities at the same time. However, when the issue comes to the multinational companies, it is always the same worldwide. It's just unencouraging for those companies to come and invest in an unsteady economy. Because unsteady economies not only worry the market players, they just, they don't worry the market players, they always worry the market players in terms of the basic parameters, financial parameters, but they always carry also political risks. That's why this is the reason when you're talking about like political risk, you are with an investor, you are just talking about it like a nightmare, like one of the most challenging environments for a foreign investor. Because basically, it's much more harder for him or for her to protect its investment in a politically struggling country. And what happens is that these investors find themselves in a position that they are always obliged to revise their projects, to revise their parameters and the feasibilities, and very frequently to be in line with the changing rules of the market. But of course, this takes too much energy from them. That's the issue. When it comes to the opportunity, financial, on the other hand, let's say, financial turbulences may create opportunities as well. But these are for those investors in that kind of that want to take a long-term position and who are just interested in the sustainability, and let's say who are patient, and they can, in that way, they can mainly greatly benefit from the market condition depending on the decreased cost. This is very easy to understand just with a solid example. When you take into consideration the Turkish currency, which decreases against the foreign currencies, this will automatically result in the decrease of the cost, which is the a major cost, which one is the investment cost, which is crucially important for all of you here among the audience. As for the legal aspects, of course, I'm pretty much convinced that all third-party players who are just willing to invest in a country, in a different economy, they are pretty much mindful about the new legal implementations in their regulations, the law enforced, etc. However, to me, the risk is not in there. The question is, are you safe, or is your investment safe against illegality or not? So when it comes down to the legal concerns, unfortunately there is no opportunity, just challenges. Because no one can find any, no one can take any advantage or no one can find any opportunity if he or she is not a part of that illegal mechanism itself. So that's true indeed that the countries with more reliable legal systems, they are more attractive and they can just draw more attention of the investors, of the investments. The reason is simple, just feeling secure and just to be on the safe side. Because in legally unstable countries, the rules and regulations may change on daily basis and not always for the good sake, for the good. So, as a foreign investor, you need always to be prepared. But that preparation includes, that preparation as a big part of that preparation, you should bring these countries into that legal arena, but international legal arena, towards by using, for instance, the tools like arbitration or the foreign through the application of the foreign treaties, the foreign laws, etc. Of course, beforehand, in advance in your commercial transactions. As for the internal challenges, finally, the internal challenges, maybe I may think of the like the cultural differences, the cultural distinction. The cultural difference play a crucially important role in foreign investments carried out by these multinational players, companies, because it really affects the way of doing business and, as you may have noticed, sometimes the outcome of decision-making processes as well. As a lawyer working in this field in the international commercial disputes, my solution is very simple: to just respect and to be patient towards the cultures, towards different cultures of the counterparty, and you simply have to find a way how to mitigate the differences between these cultures and by using the two magical words: the understanding and empathy. I assure you that these two magical words will be able to solve any legal problems, or mostly all of that. Because, even the most well-drafted contract by the most scrupulously prepared agreement or the legal documentation by the zealous lawyers will not mean a lot if the parties to that agreement, to that transaction, they don't have that mutual understanding and empathy. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your patience.
Thank you, Mr. Benguyan. What a great way to wrap up. Understanding and empathy. We will certainly remember this.
Thank you, Tom.
Dr. Yıldız Özkök, you wrote an outstanding chapter for a book on economic policy, theory and practice, which is published in September this year, recently. Your chapter is about economic policies applied in Turkey during the pandemic. First, what are your main findings on impact of the fiscal and monetary policies implemented in Turkey? Second, I would like to ask you, based on your findings, what policy recommendations would you give to policymakers going forward?
Thank you very much. I will talk in Turkish if there is no problem. Okay. Öncelikle pandemi daha önceki krizlerden çok daha farklı bir kriz. Çünkü hem ekonomi açısından baktığımızda hem arz tarafını hem de talep tarafını çift yönlü olarak etkilemiş olan bir kriz. Çünkü hem talep tarafında insanlar, kişiler harcama yapmaktan çekinirken aynı zamanda arz tarafında da üretim aksamaya başladı. Tabii ki daha önceden pandemi krizleri oldu. Ama daha önceki pandemi krizlerinden bu krizin farkı dünyanın artık çok mobil hale gelmesi. Yani hem insanların çok rahat bir şekilde ülkeler arasında, bölgeler arasında gidip gelmesi, aynı zamanda mal ve hizmetin de çok rahat bir şekilde hareket etmesi burada çok önemli bir faktör. Burada tabii bankacılık ve finans sektörünün de çok önemli bir payı var çünkü ödemeler artık bu aracılıkla olduğu için bu mal ve hizmet mobilitesi daha da hızlı bir şekilde artmış oldu. Covid'e baktığımız zaman, dünyada baktığımız zaman 270 milyon vaka var, 5,3 milyonda can kaybı var. Türkiye'de de 9 milyon vaka ve 80 bin ölüm sayısı var. Şimdi bizim tabii ki bunun ekonominin üzerinde de bir maliyeti söz konusu oluyor. Hem Türkiye hem de dünya açısından trilyonlarca dolar bir maliyet söz konusu. Dünya ekonomisi 2022'de %3,3 küçülürken Türkiye ekonomisi %1,8 büyüme gerçekleştirdi. Türkiye açısından çok önemli bir hani bu kriz açısından aslında pozitif bir etki. Hani bazı krizlerin fırsata çevrilmesi gibi bir durum söz konusu olmuş oldu Türkiye açısından. Dünyada da 2021'de %5,9'luk bir büyüme öngörülürken Türkiye muhtemelen %10 civarında bir büyüme gerçekleştirecek. Bu da çok önemli. Bunun ötesinde tabii analitik çalışmalara baktığımız zaman şimdi en çok hani ekonomik açıdan konuştuğumuz Türkiye açısından da dünya açısından da bu pandeminin getirdiği bir enflasyon olgusu var. Çünkü hani pandeminin etkisi de geçmeye başladıktan sonra toplam talepte bir artış söz konusu olmaya başladı. Ama aynı zamanda arz tarafından baktığımız zaman maliyet artışı da söz konusu. Dolayısıyla hani biz enflasyon dediğimiz zaman enflasyon bir talep enflasyonu vardır, bir arz enflasyonu vardır. Hem toplam talepte bir artış var, hem de maliyet tarafında artış olduğundan dolayı toplam arz tarafında bir kısmı var. Dolayısıyla çift yönlü bir hani enflasyon baskısı söz konusu. Amerika'da da %6,2 enflasyon açıklandı en son. Muhtemelen hani biraz daha yukarıya çıkacak. Faizler üzerinde de bir muhtemelen baskı yapacak. İşte FED de bununla birlikte bir faiz artışına gitmeye başlayacak 2022'de. Günümüzde şu anda hani en çok tartışılan işte faiz, enflasyon, dolar kuru. Biraz da onunla ilgili konuşmak istiyorum ben. Tabii ülkemizde diğer ülkelerle birlikte pandeminin başında ilk başta genişletici, gevşek bir para politikası izlendi. Bütün ülkeler parasal anlamda Merkez Bankası, merkez bankaları ekonomiye para pompalamaya başladı. Ki firmalarda işte kapanma süreci oldu, gelirler azaldı, insanların harcamaları devam etsin diye bir parasal genişleme söz konusuydu. Tabii bu parasal genişlemenin sonucu olarak da bir enflasyon olgusuyla karşı karşıya gelmeye başladık. Dediğim gibi bu enflasyon, hani Friedman'ın dediği gibi enflasyon her zaman her yerde parasal bir olgudur diyor. Para da bir mal ve hizmet gibi düşünürsek bir şey ne kadar bollaşırsa fiyatı da o kadar ucuzluyor. Dolayısıyla faizler de düşük seviyede seyretmeye başlıyor. Amerika'da %6'sının üzerinde bir enflasyon varken %0,25 bir faiz oranı söz konusu. Ülkemizde de şu anda %21,3 enflasyon varken %15 bir politika faizi söz konusu. Tabii Türkiye'de şu anda hani ilk başlarda bir genişletici para politikası vardı. Daha sonra sıkılaştırmaya gidildi. Şu anda tekrar işte faizlerde bir düşüş söz konusu. Buradaki ana amaç tabii ki cari açığın düşürülmesi, ülkemizin yurt dışındaki rekabet avantajının daha yüksek seviyelere çekilmesi. Hani bunları düşündüğümüz zaman faizdeki düşüşün bir anlam ifade ettiğini söyleyebiliriz. Ama ekonomideki en önemli şey güven ve belirsizlik olgularıdır. Dolayısıyla bundan sonraki dönemde yapılan tasarrufların yatırımlara dönüşebilmesi için bu düşük faizin şu şekilde, mesela insanlar diyelim ki tasarruf ediyorlar, bu tasarruflarını bankalara ya da finans kuruluşlarına mevduat ve benzeri şekilde yatırmaları gerekiyor. Bunlar kredi ve yatırıma dönüşebilsin. Eğer bunlar altın ya da işte döviz vesaire gibi şeylere gidip varlıklara gidip yastık altına giderse bunun çok fazla anlamı olmaz. Dolayısıyla bizim ülkemiz için, aslında tüm gelişmekte olan ülkeler için belki geçerli ama bizim ülkemiz için çok daha geçerli bir durum söz konusu. Bizim dışa bağımlılığımız çok yüksek. Yani biz mal ve hizmet üretirken dolar kurunun artmasıyla ihracatımız evet artıyor ama ithalatımızda da maalesef bir artış oluyor. Dolayısıyla bizim öncelikle hani bu diğer şeylerin iktisat teorilerinde zaten var. Faiz, enflasyon, dolar, işte bir esnek bir kur sistemi var, sermaye hareketliliği var. İşte biri artarsa biri azalıyor vesaire ama uzun vadede düşündüğümüz zaman iktisadi açıdan Türkiye'nin dışa bağımlılığının azalması gerekiyor. Ben her zaman hani derslerde de öğrencilerime anlatıyorum. Bizde tabii ki emek gücü yüksek, genç nüfus yüksek, emeğe verilen ücret bunun karşılığında çok daha düşük. Bizim ülke olarak tekstil ürün, yani şunu üretmek yerine buna benzer katma değeri yüksek bir ürün üretmemiz gerekiyor ki uzun vadede çok daha önemli bir büyüme, ekonomik büyüme gerçekleştirebilelim. Katma değeri yüksek ürün üretmek demek, yani bunun mesela telefonun bir maliyetini düşündüğünüz zaman işte belki hani fiziki anlamda 1000 lira ama bunun içine giren teknoloji, inovasyonu düşündüğünüz zaman bunun satış fiyatı 15, 20, 25'e çıkıyor yani Türkiye olarak düşündüğünüzde. Dolayısıyla bizim katma değeri yüksek ürünler üretmemiz gerekiyor. Bunun için de en önemli şeylerden bir tanesi tabii ki sermaye. O yüzden bankacılık ve finans bizim için çok daha önemli. Bankacılık ve finans sektöründe güven, bilginin tam akışının sağlanması, sistemin tam oturması, hukuki şeylerin daha rahat bir şekilde işlemesi bu anlamda çok önemli. Ve bu sermaye bizim ülkemizde ne kadar daha kolay ve rahat girerse, bu sermaye katma değeri yüksek ürünler şeklinde ortaya çıkarsa ekonomi çok daha sağlıklı bir şekilde büyüyecektir diye düşünüyorum. Dolayısıyla bu sermayenin de Türkiye'ye gelmesi sıcak para anlamında değil, uzun vadeli yatırımlar şeklinde olması gerekiyor ki ekonomide Türkiye'nin önü çok daha hızlı bir şekilde açılabilsin.
Thank you, Dr. Özkök, and congratulations with all the great work you're doing. We are looking forward to your next book.
Thank you.
Now, I would like to take 3 questions from the audience. We have a great audience today, very valuable presentations, and who would like to ask questions? Please, sir.
Thank you. My question specifically to the central bank governors. With the disruption we see in the finance and banking coming very fast and very hard with the fintech, with digital banking, with the cryptocurrencies, how do you see the future of central banks? Specifically, we are walking toward decentralized maybe banking and finance system. Thank you.
I have a question to one of you. What I understood currently, Turkey is tending to reduce labor costs. So labor cost is getting cheap in Turkey, but on the same time, you explained to me you want to have high value-added innovative products to be made in Turkey, which normally requires high degree of automation and high capital-intensive investments. So that means I'm a little bit confused as a non-economic person how this can work. On the one side, your labor cost is getting cheap in Turkey, but on the other side, heavy investments, high innovative production, high degree of automation, these heavy investments. So I don't see how this can work out.
One more question. Son soru. Türkçe de sorabilirsiniz. Any questions? Okay. So please go.
Right now, because of the pandemic, Turkish people are taking more loans and having more liabilities. So how will this affect Turkish people's spending and welfare in the future, and for the long run? Yeah. And Mrs. Özkök as well.
So 1 minute per panelist. Please last points and also answers to questions.
Okay. So answer to question about future of central banks. We have to accommodate central bankers. We need to know more about the climate. We need to know more about technology. We need to make sure that we allow all sources of financial inclusion and access to finance to develop, but at the same time, our main mandate will not change. We have to make sure that we contribute to low and stable inflation, and equally importantly, we have to make sure that financial stability is preserved. Otherwise, this will turn into much bigger problems and it will endanger sustainable economic development. Again, disruptive developments, but our mandate changes as it was before.
Better is this microphone. Central bankers always follow some technological improvement by financial literacy and financial inclusion. Also, every activity is based on regulation. For example, of trade technology and currencies will be based on regulation and some collateral. This is very safe financial stability to resist and stable banking system. In our country, banking system share around 90% in the financial system. This is after crisis, all key banking parameters really improving. We giving the support to the real economy and citizens and preserving banking stability. Also in this improvement, the first place is saving banking and financial stability, consequently macroeconomic stability.
Soruya cevap olarak şöyle söyleyeyim. Tabii ki emek gücünün çok ucuz olması ve bizim katma değeri yüksek ürünler yapmamız açısından bir handikap gibi görülebiliyor. Burada tabii şöyle bir faktör var. Türkiye'deki beşeri sermayenin kalitesi çok yüksek. Yani bizim hani ben Türkiye'de yaşadığım için söylemiyorum ama insanımızın hani gerçekten çalışkan, zeki olduğunu düşünüyorum. Beşeri sermayenin yurt dışına kaçmaması, gitmemesi gerekiyor. Yani bu pandemide mesela aşı uygulananlardan bir tanesi biliyorsunuz. Türk dolayısıyla bu beşeri sermayenin dışarıya kaçmaması için emek gücüne gereken değer eğer verilirse bu inovasyon dediğimiz, teknoloji dediğimiz, katkı değeri yüksek mal ve hizmet üretmek konusunda Türkiye işte o zaman bunu aşacaktır. Bu tabii ki kısa vadeli bir şey değil, yani 3 aylık, bir yıllık bir şey değil, iktisadi politika değil, biraz zaman alacak olan bir şey. Ama ne zaman ki biz emek gücüne daha değer verirsek ve bunun kaçmasını engelleyebilirsek eğer, o zaman Türkiye bu anlamda çok daha ileriye gidecektir. Teşekkür ederim.
Thank you again. I forgot your question. Sorry for that. You haven't alerted me. That was just about the how to strengthen the arbitration mechanism, right? Okay, perfect. I'm fluent also in Turkish, that's why I'm just turning to Turkish at that point. So Şimdi dostane çözüm yöntemleriyle aslında başlamak istiyorum. Şu soru, tahkim mekanizmasını nasıl olur da geliştiririz, ama tahkim mekanizmasından öte esasen belki bizim hatırlamamız gereken, bizde bir yabancı yatırımcının da hoşuna gideceği bir yeni mekanizma, arabuluculuk mekanizması var. Bu arabuluculuk mekanizması kendi içerisinde tabii ikiye ayrılmış vaziyette. İhtiyari olan var, zorunlu olan var vesaire. Ama her halükarda bizim yabancı yatırımcı olsun veya da lokal uyuşmazlıklar olsun, takimin haricinde esasen son senelerde uyuşmazlıkların çözümünde etkilenen bir etkin yöntemimiz olarak ortaya çıktı. Bu da müktesebatımızın tabii uyumu anlamında bir gelişme. Bunun haricinde şimdi geleyim, tabii her mesele arabuluculukla çözülmüyor. Maalesef bunlar amicable solution'lar olarak, yani dostane çözüm yöntemleri olarak geçse de dostane çözemiyoruz. Tahkim meselesinin ise daha iyileştirilmesi, daha efektif hale getirilmesi için benim ele aldığım ve vurgulamak istediğim aslında 4 ana temel nokta var. Birincisi süre, yani tahkim süresi, tahkim yargılamasının ne kadar uzun olabileceği, ne kadar sürebileceği bu yabancı yatırımcı için önem arz eder. 2, hakemlerin uzmanlığı, yani meslek bağlı olup olmadıkları, ne kadar kalifiye oldukları. 3, en önemlisi masraflar, yani tahkimin bir mahkeme sürecine, bir yargılama sürecine niye tercih edilmesi gerektiği masraflar bakımından. 4 ise bence tüm bunlardan öte bir hukukçu kafasıyla en çok ilgilenmesi gereken nokta, tahkim kararını aldıktan sonra uygulanabilirliği, yani ifa gücü, tenfizi diyeyim yani. Şimdi süre bakımından biz İstanbul Tahkim Merkezimiz var, özellikle güzel işleyen, yine son yıllarda çok güzel kararlar vermiş olan, kararlarında uygulanabilirliği gayet görülen kurumumuz. Tabii Stockholm'e, ICC'ye vesaire bu şu anda rakip durumda, lokal anlamda yurt dışı multinational işler vesaire tabii ki rekabet etme düzeyinde değil. Süre açısından evet, kısalığı evet, dolayısıyla tercih edilebilir bir durumda. Hakemlerin uzmanlığı ve tecrübesi yine evet, hakemlerin uzmanlığı ve tecrübesi anlamında da gayet ileri seviyedeyiz. Masraflar anlamında dikkat çekici bir husus var. Bunu kendi resmi internet sayfalarına özellikle baktım. Çünkü hep söylerler ki şu vardır akılda, tahkimi seçmemiz için daha az masraflı, daha ucuz masraflı şekilde uyuşmazlığımızı çözmesi lazım. Peki şöyle yaptık. 1 milyon dolar örneğinde tahkim, ICC tahkiminin 140 bin dolarlık bir yargılama gideri yüklediği, Stockholm Ticaret Odası tahkiminin yine 1 milyon bu sefer euroluk bir uyuşmazlıkta yargılama gideri, ortalama söylüyorum bu rakamları, yargılama gideri olarak 105 bin euro aşağı yukarı mal oldu. Şimdi orantı yapınca da anlayacaksınız esasen ne kadar kıymetli olduğunu. İstanbul Tahkim Merkezi'nin ise 1 milyon Türk liralık bir uyuşmazlıkta aşağı yukarı ortalama 75 bin Türk lirasıyla çözümledi. Dolayısıyla efektif anlamda, yani masrafları kısmak anlamında efektif, bizim tahkim merkezimiz yine efektif ve tercih edilebilir bir vaziyette. Hatta masraflı anlamda diğerlerine nazaran bayağı bir önder durumda. En sonuncuya geliyorum, kısaca toparlıyorum. Şimdi tahkim kararının, yani tahkim yargılaması neticesinde çıkan kararın uygulanılığıyla her halükarda bir mahkemeye ihtiyacımız var. Her halükarda bir icra yetkisi olan, adı icra müdürlüğü olsun, icra dairesi olsun, mahkeme olsun, değişik hukuk sistemlerinde değişir bu. Bir mekanizmaya ihtiyacımız var ve bakın lütfen şunu düşünün. Uluslararası uyuşmazlığın temeli esasen diyelim ki bir ticari alacak veyahut da bambaşka bir maddi uyuşmazlık olsun. Temel çözüleceği nokta borçlunun veyahut da yargılamayı kaybeden tarafın değil, bu tazmin gücünü oluşturan mal varlığının nerede bulunduğudur, hangi ülkede bulunduğudur. Dolayısıyla o kararın o ülkede uygulanır olması aslında çok kıymetli ve değerlidir bizim için. Maalesef burada işte takimin bir eksikliği var. Belki daha çok aslında kullanılır olabilitesi var fakat yararlanmamızın başlıca sebebi bu çok uzun süren tanıma ve tenfiz davalarımız var. Fakat sadece bizim değil, bu maalesef tüm dünyanın sorunu, tüm Avrupa'nın da sorunu aynı şekilde. Tahkim her ne kadar usul anlamında New York Konvansiyonu'nda olsa, New York Konvansiyonu'nda biz ülke olarak tarafız, belirlenmiş olsa ki nasıl uygulanacak, zorundalıklar vesaire çekinceler koymuş vaziyetteler ülkeler. Evvela bu çekincelerin kaldırılıyor olması lazım. Sonra da bunun en önemli çözümü olarak ben şunu görüyorum, tam sorunuza cevap, nasıl daha güçlendirilir? Şunu yapması lazım, her devlet kendi müktesebatı anlamında tahkim kararlarının aynı bir hukuk usulü muhakemesi gibi ne şekilde, hangi şartlarda hemen kabul edileceği, hangilerinin ve hangi şartlarda kabul edilemeyeceğini tek tek yazması lazım ki mahkemeler uzun süre bununla gidip gelmesinler ve bir anda hemen o tahkim kararı uygulanırlık kazansın. Aslında biz hep şunu söyleriz, müvekkil bir yerde gol ister, istediğimiz kadar biz tahkimi kazanalım veya da yargılamayı lehim bitirelim. Aslında o tamamen kendi maddi başarısının alacağının peşinde. Biz bunu sağlamak için işte buna ihtiyacımız var. 2, ihtisas mahkemeleri bence burada çok önemli. Çünkü tahkim konusunda ihtisaslaşmış hakimlerin çoğalması, dil konusunda, yabancı dil konusunda yetkin hakimlerin artması ve sadece bu husus, mahsus olarak bu işi yapan mahkemelerin kuruluyor olması da önüne bir tahkim kararı geldiğinde bununla 2-3 sene uğraşmaktansa en azından birkaç ay geçirse bunun çözümlenmesini sağlayacaktır. Ben bu şekilde düşünüyorum bunun başarıya giden yolunu. Umarım bu dediklerim kısa bir süre içinde olacak. Ben çok gayet umutluyum. Teşekkür ederim.
Simply to thank everybody for the attention. It's very important that there are these opportunities to exchange views, to hear the point of view of the other. So I wish success to this summit and hope to see other one in the coming years for the benefit of Turkey and everybody. Thank you.
Thank you all for the great discussion and a round of applause for our panelists.